Welcome back to I'm Pravda and today I will be your host. The topic for today will be creating a set specifically built around the webshop as a continuation of the last video. But this will not be a hermetic be-all end-all type of build though. It will be more like looking at what we have and what is the best to put in a set and try to get as much as we can with what we have. Because there is a lot of RNG involved and not everybody will have the same things. And this is still high rank. So, we will take a look at weapons, armor sets, and the skills, and try to pick the better ones and explain why, without digging too much into the details, because I want to keep my guides for beginners. I also will address some mistakes or misunderstandings that I made in the last video, that you should take a watch before watching this, if you come across with some. Before starting, let me say one thing. I will not be talking about art and weapons. It is true that those weapons can be potentially the very best of its class, but it takes a lot of luck, time and patience to get. So if you already have a great argent weapon, go ahead and use it, but I will only be talking about monster part-made weapons of the weapon tree. Without further ado, let's get started. The first topic will be the skills, because we will be talking about them throughout the entirety of the video, so it is good to know the basis. This is about general use decorations, and we'll leave armor, a specific one, for the armor section. For people who don't know, decorations are a type of jewels that can be slotted in the armor and give extra skills. They come in 3 slot levels. A level 2 deco can slot in a level 3 space, but not the other way around. You mostly get them randomly after a high rank quest, but you can also make some of the lower level ones at the Elder Melder. In Wilds, they introduced armor and weapon specific decorations that cannot be interchanged. In the past, we used to be able to put any deco at any slot if they fit, but this is important because this limits the freedom we have at slotting some decorations. If you have seen my last video, you may already know that focus is one of the best skills to have for the great sword. Luckily for us, a lot of swords already come with focus available by default, so in most cases you will not have to slot a decoration for it. But if your weapon of choice doesn't come with focus, it should be top priority to slot in. Let's get the good old attack and critical eye out of the way quick. They are good, obviously. They adjust more damage and affinity with no condition. But I think Monster Hunter has evolved and there are much better and interesting ways to get your damage and affinity up, especially since the restriction on where to put the decos. So, we have to be a little extra careful. If you don't have anything better, sure, use them. But we will talk about some other alternatives. Kind of the same thing for Agitator. In Iceborne, it was so good because when a monster wasn't enraged, you just enraged it yourself by thrusting its stupid face over a wall, with some pebbles you found laying on the ground. But there is no clutch claw in Wilds, so we can't do that. Speedrunners tend to use this skill a lot, but they kill the monster so fast that they only need one enrage and they are done. But for normal hunt, I think it doesn't make the cut. And if I talk about speedrunners and Agitator, I also have to talk about Heroics. This skill brings one of the strongest damage buffs, but only people with high skill level can make use of it. I absolutely do not recommend using it for normal gameplay, from evolving a basic combo to another one, but this time is more useful. Weakness exploit and critical boost. I do think that always building for high affinity and critical boost is kinda boring, promotes lack of ingenuity and takes away diversity between weapons. But I also like to see the big number pop up, so I also out my own principles, especially in this game. In the last video I said that critical boost gives 5% more critical damage, for a total of 30%, but here it's a 40% at level 5. That's a huge deal, and paired with weakness exploit is amazing. Weakness exploit gives a large amount of affinity for targeting a weak point of the monster, which is something you will always try to do, with or without weakness exploit. So lots of crits and better crit damage. It's a no-brainer. Now we will start talking about more interesting skills. Starting with Counter-Strike, which is a pretty mediocre skill overall, but for Greatsword is actually pretty awesome. This skill increases your attack after getting knocked down, which are the vast majority of monster attacks. In general, you don't want this happening to you, but powering through one of those attacks with hyper armor still triggers the skill without sending you flying. And what do we literally do all the time? Shoulder tackling through attacks as much as we can. And those plus 25 raw damage is nothing to sneeze at. I think it's one of the best skills for GS at the moment, unless it's not working as intended and remove the interaction with the hyper armor. Similarly, another great skill to have, but to a lesser extent in my opinion, is offensive guard. For Greatsword, this pretty much works the same as Counter-Strike, but instead of shoulder tackling, we do it by perfect blocking. The more I played Wilds, the more I think blocking is busted. Saves you from tough situations, triggers clashes and gives opportunities to counterattack. Moreover, offensive guard is an impressive 15% damage at level 3, but I think that shoulder tackling and Counter-Strike are better. It might be me after playing so much Golden Rise, but I just do the shoulder bash instinctively. Even with focus, you spend most of the time with the Greatsword charging the attacks, and the tackle is always available during those periods of time, unlike the block. Also, even though blocking is pretty quick and responsive, sometimes you get stuck in a recovery animation, where you can't block while you can pretty much always cancel roll and do a tackle right after that. Also, higher level skill of Counter-Strike increase the duration of the buff, unlike offensive guard. And you also trigger Counter-Strike by messing up, so in general you get a better uptime of the buff. And finally, the last skill we will talk about in depth is what I think is overall the best, or at least the most flexible, not only for GS but in general. I like to call it the agitator of wilds, and it's antivirus. By itself is a little useless, but when paired with an armor skill we will later talk about, becomes very potent. The English translation states that gives plus 15% affinity at level 3 when recovering from defensive virus, but it seems to be a mistranslation and gives 10% instead, so it's at plus 25% overall when summed to the 15 base of covering the virus. One thing the description says is that greatly increases recovery rate after contracting the virus, and that's 100% true. Even at level 1, you recover so quickly you get all the benefits pretty fast, so the uptime is very consistent. Honorable mentions before start talking about the weapons are maximum might and peak performance. One grants attack when full HP, and the other grants affinity when stamina is full. None of those I think are good enough because you get cheap damage when you tackle through attacks, and tackling consumes stamina, and we already discussed about how we are shoulder bashing as much as we can, so even though it's pretty easy to have full stamina when attacking a down monster with a Greatsword because attacking itself doesn't consume stamina, during the rest of the fight you will never be full speed nor full stamina. Now the weapons. There are several interesting weapons on the weapon tree, so let's check them out. A note to keep in mind is that in my Greatsword guide I'll talk about the bloated and true raw damage. And one thing I don't know is that you can change that in the options. We will use the true raw for this. First of them is the Cyclinde. It might not have the highest raw, but it has a very good plus 15 affinity and lots of white sharpness, which is the maximum sharpness for the actual high rank. Also has poison if you like a status effect, and passives that go along with it. Is an overall pretty comfortable weapon if you still are going through high rank and still don't have an endgame build. And now let's talk about the total opposite type of weapon, the Grimslayer Urgium. This weapon has the highest potential of any weapon of this game, but requires an insane amount of build around, that with the limited high rank options it might not be even possible to use it reliably. It's basically the Fatalis Greatsword from Iceborne, but in the Wild's high rank. It has the highest raw damage of any weapon, but at the expense of minus 20% affinity and blue sharpness. It can be upgraded to white with handicraft. We didn't talk about handicraft in the skill section, because it's a situational skill, you only use it when you need it. But in short, handicraft increases the amount of sharpness a weapon has, but to an extent determined by the weapon itself. So it's important research to know when it's worth to use it. In this case, Mix has reached white sharpness, as already said, so it is worth. So this weapon gets the highest raw damage and the highest sharpness multiplier, but we already used some of Decos for a handicraft. We also need to work a lot to get that minus 20% affinity to 100. And these weapons come with focus at level 2, which is nice but it's not level 3. So if we want to get to 3, we have to slot a level of focus. This is why I said it has the most potential but has insane build around. With current high rank options, it might not be even possible to get all the skills possible to make it work, but the potential is there. That's why the next weapon is the one I've been using the most, the Stalwart Lamorak. It's really ugly, but it's a nice middle ground between the Sieglinde and the Grimslayer Urgium. 220 raw damage, 500 dragon element, which at least is one of the best elements. Natural white sharpness, level 3 focus, and nice deco slots make it one of the more flexible options. For me, it's just a straight upgrade to the Sieglinde, and should be first weapon you want to make when starting to build for a proper endgame set. If you like the Grimslayer Urgium but you don't have the resources to make it work, there is an alternative, the Giant Jaw Blade. It's very similar, but trades 10 less raw damage for 0% affinity and has the same blue sharpness that can be upgraded to white. The problem with this weapon is that it's still pretty heavy on the resources needed to make it work, and it's short to craft. The requirements themselves are not strange, there are a bunch of easy to acquire bones, but you need a bunch of commission tickets to craft it, and to this day with 100 hours played I still haven't seen one. They are supposed to be gotten with the supply ship by selecting the miscellaneous option, but they just don't show up. It might be easier to get a decent Artian weapon, and it's just more trouble than it's worth. Finally, the last weapon I want to talk very shortly about is one I've seen a lot of people talk very positively, but I don't think is really that good, and it's the Precipice Metalam. I don't know, I think it's the weakest of all the weapons I've talked about. It's not bad, it's pretty decent and probably the best ice weapon of the weapon tree, but I think the Sieglinde is better even with lower raw damage, because I think having 300 poison and 15 affinity is way better than having 600 ice damage. And the final topic of the video are going to be the armors. I'm not gonna lie, there are a lot of armors to analyze, and I'm starting to get tired of looking at so many numbers. And for me there is one armor that is just so good and easy to use, so I will only talk about 2 armor sets or maybe 3. But before that, let's explain a little bit the alpha and beta sets. Pretty much the alpha sets have more innate armor skills, and beta ones have less but more decoration slots. This essentially means that alpha sets are better for playing throughout the game normally, as they have more skills and less to worry about. Meanwhile, beta sets are better for endgame builds, because give more freedom to slot the skills you want while still giving good skills from the armor. That means we will mostly talk about beta ones, as we are using them for an endgame build, unless there is an alpha armor piece that has a lot of the skills you want and don't care that much for the deco slots. So without much further ado, let's start talking about the armors. The first one is the G in the Hat set, which I don't think is really that good, so it's obviously not the one I've been foreshadowing during the whole of the video. But if you like Agitator, this set is really cool. It also has one level of the weakness exploit, which is something. And the set bonus for having 4 pieces of the same armor is decent. It's nothing crazy, especially since power clashes count. I think power clashes are the weakest between shoulder tackles and offset attacks, but they are still a thing you aim to do during the fight. In short, I think it's a pretty good transitional armor to have between having a ground suit and a decent endgame one. A decent endgame one like the Gore Magala set? Yes, this is the one. For me, the Gore Magala set is so good that I've been barely using anything else. This set is so good because of the set bonus, for having 4 pieces of it. Infects you with defensive virus automatically when confronting a large monster and gives you attack, and even more attack once you overcome the virus. This is where antivirus comes in. With antivirus bonuses and ease to cure the virus, you get an amazing uptime of attack and affinity, and can be even paired with coalescence, which is a skill I haven't talked about, but basically gives you even more attack, both raw and elemental, after recovering from blights or abnormal status, which defensive virus counts as. It's also so easy to get antivirus, because the beta grips already comes with 1 level of it, and has 2 level 1 decoration slots, which the antivirus jewels are. It's all just so convenient, to be honest. We will see if the next update in April gives us more armor set that gives alternatives, because this one is pretty dominant right now. To end the video, let's talk about the Guardian Dosheguma set. This one gives you a lot of heroics, which I already said that I don't recommend it, but it's still a very potent skill that when used correctly it makes you deal monstrous amount of damage. Also, the bonus set is really interesting as it gives you extra damage for offsetting monster attacks, and we already know how strong the offset follow-up attack is. This one is an amazing set if you have mastered the game and know everything about the monsters and know exactly how to fight them perfectly, but I still don't recommend it if you are new to the game. And this is the end. I hope I've been helpful in any way, and thank you for watching. As always, if you reached this far, consider liking, subscribing, and all the good things. It really helps a lot. Have a good hunt and remember to stay hydrated to have the most of the shoulder tackle.